Welcome to the Adeptus of the Brush. Now, in post-production, this is what the final model is going to look like. I'll put this up at the start of each of the parts so you can see it. And if people would like to see a condensed time-lapse of the whole painting process reduced down without the waffling, I'm more than happy to put one up if people leave a comment and tell me that's what they want to see. So, at this point, I'm going to use some Khorne red. Now this Khorne red is only just about viable, I think. I think I'm going to have a problem with it. So on the track sections, I'm going to start dabbing this almost like a sponging stippling technique. On the sides, I'm not going to worry about the bolts. If I get it on the bolts, it don't matter, but I want to try and avoid the tracks, or the wheels for the tracks at least. And again, I don't mind if I get it on the wheel in the middle. I shouldn't have glued that on in the first place. That was a big mistake. Try and avoid the big wheel. So we'll come in with Khorne red and then Mephiston red several times to build this up. So this is a problem that I've glued this wheel on. It's going to make my painting journey with this model a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. I like this particular brush because of its shape. It allows me to work in multiple ways at once. I can use the chisel tip for a little bit of precision, but I can also dry brush with it and do other things. I think they're a cheap makeup brush from Superdrug that I picked up. Yeah, we will end up with some, unfortunately, getting where we don't want it, but yeah, we'll live with that. I don't have to worry about the inside face because you can't see that ever. Just want to make sure that the undersides of the arms have got a little bit of this red on them to start with. That's that one. That's the more difficult of the two. I think there's a little bit there that I haven't got to yet. This is why it's making my life a bit more difficult than it needs to be. That's the start. That one. That's off that one. So this red's only just about viable. I need to get a new pot. You see, this one's so much quicker to paint because it's not fully assembled. Ooh, yeah, made a mistake. Oh well. Check this side's done. So change the angle. I know I've missed a bit there, but that's because I was holding it. That's what I mean about the quality of the paint starting to go. It's gotten a little bit more red than it was. This is why we were coming back several times with it. And that's one of the reasons why we're stippling with it as well, because it's on its way out, unfortunately. Some of these harder to reach places first. It's got much brighter. And it's giving us a bit of texture as well, which is unfortunate, but we'll make use of it. Just have a stipple a little bit with it. We'll make use of that somehow. Fortunately, it does dry a lot darker than it looks when it was applied. So I'm going to say that's that one done. Just noticed on this one I haven't quite done the underside of the tracks, so come back and do that now. these bits that it's forming. Don't really understand it. I think some of it's to do with the way the paint is actually starting to cure. Unfortunately, before I've used it, I don't know if I want to swap out to the Galvor back or not. We'll keep going with it, we'll see how it works out. But that definitely doesn't look as red as the first one. So let's try and even things out a little bit. So this was one of the reasons I was wanting to stipple this on in the first place. That's a bit better. We've also got to do some of the tank body. So I just try and lay the underside, just get it on. Not to worry about either side, the wheels as such. As long as I miss the actual face of it too much, I'm alright. So again, I'm not worried about the face side of it. I do want the top edge. I'll treat it exactly the same way on the other side. All the way to the edge, and then I want to do the inside face as best I can. Don't need to get all the way down onto the copper or onto the metal, just need a little bit there. I can wash that out with a bit of Agrexo later if I need to, if the gap's a little wider than I want. helps me not miss any bits. Now at the bottom of the steel plate I'm going to go back into the red, so back in behind the Mechanicum operative is back into the colours of Mars. And then separates that, makes that look almost like a battery pack, a power pack to raise and lower the mole head itself. The front arm's going to be probably in Retributor Gold, simulate some kind of brass, but this bit is going to keep to the same colour of the rest of the tank, so I'll try and get the red on the front plate and then avoid that top of that console if I can. As I say, this red's starting like a file on me. Too worried about the floor, but I do want the walls done. I think I could get away with just washing the floor between the termite and the servitor operative that goes there. I don't think you're going to see it, so I'm not going to worry about that part of the model. I can just literally chuck a wash down there and that will disguise any of the bits that I need to in there. Last bit is the very back plate, and some of you may recognise it. Yes, I have taken the front hatch from a Land Raider. It was trimmed down, but it seems to have a good fit for the overall look of the model. Did look at a couple of different engine housings, even taken the engine plate from a Land Raider to look at. No, it didn't look right. This really fit well. It kind of looked a little bit too good, if you know what I mean. It looked almost like it was made for it. So that's the layer of Khorne red that I'm going to put on there. I don't know that we're going to get much more sense out of the paint. Might get a little bit more. Just give it one more coat over these track sections and see how it lightens it up anymore. I think the next one's going to be Mephiston red. Looking at this, there's one more go over this one. think it needs to be Mephiston red over the top of that. And you'd be surprised at how much that's actually brought it together. There are a few more bits we need to finish off on it, but we are a lot closer to the end than you possibly think. I'm going to leave that to dry. I shall be back shortly. Right, we've left those bits to dry for a little while, and what I'm going to do now is get the Mephiston red out ready to use. Same process done before, just load some out onto the table. And for this one, I'm going to give a good shout out to my good friend Twisted Tower Studios. I've been using sponges, makeup sponges for years, but this really did take me to heart. I love these little cubes, especially with the tool. I can arrange and position the sponge how I like. If I want to get a flat surface, I can arrange it as such. If I want to get an edge or a chisel tip, I can position the sponge as such. Or if I want to get just a fine tip, I can. Brilliant, simply brilliant. So big shout out to Twisted Tower Studios for these. These are absolutely immense. So I'm just going to put my sponge on the end flat. Put it into my Mephiston red. Load it onto the sponge. And then take a significant amount of it off. And show you that's it from the side assembled. It's not glued together yet, so I'm just going to take the side off for the moment and work on the more difficult one first. So literally just come in and sponge the Mephiston red towards the middle portion of the panels, try and catch the edges, just lighten the tone a little bit. So I do find this quite spectacular. Can I actually get that part off? This is causing me some problems now. I may have glued that in way too well. No, that's well truly in there. I ain't getting that off. Oh well, I'll have to make do. I can't see those bits, so if I can't see them, I'm sure someone else can't. Making my job more difficult. I shouldn't have put that bit in there first. helps to build up some variety of tone on the model. Probably have to come in with a chisel tip, try and get some of the edges. So much easier without that wheel on there. So I wish I had not put it on the other side. And yeah, that's one of the things I want, is I do want it to look a bit patchy, which is one of the uses I can get out of sponging. And again, I'll probably have to come in with a chisel tip to get to those parts. I painted these off camera earlier. These are just the supports for the rail. And again, I'm trying to focus the brighter red towards the top, because the bottom's going to be shaded. Blend in some of the pigments and stuff at the end. Just the inside face. do for that one. They're on the inside, so I ain't worrying about them too much. Try and see if I can get any of the tank. I'll do the underside and the back plate to start with. This doesn't need to be as good as the rest of the model, so I'll quite happily get away with using this side of it at the moment. I will have to change the tip in a minute, but it will do for the underside and the back plate. Trying to avoid getting it on the wheels if I can. So the underside doesn't have to look as good. You're not going to be looking at the underside. I'm sure that's why the Rogel Dawn model hasn't got an underside. GW decided it was unnecessary. It would have been an extra cost to the model and would have made the Rogel Dawn prohibitively expensive. So I think they decided to just leave it out. We're quickly running out of paint on the palette. Yeah, I think it's new sponge time as well. So I'll just chuck that away now. Still working in the same profile, so I'll keep the sponge the same shape. Mine was just getting a little too worn to carry on. I don't know what it is, there's something strangely satisfying about using a sponge to paint the tank. Might about just get some of the front plate done. One of the things I like about it, it does help create natural shadows, because if the sponge can't get to it, that part's going to be dark. It tends to be very, very good and effective at highlighting certain parts. So I'm going to have to change the face of the brush in a minute, because the sponge is alright for flat surfaces, but when I'm trying to get into angled parts, it's going to become problematic soon. Just trying to get the flatter areas whilst I can. that one. I'll change this one. I'll try and get a nice chisel tip going. So we've got it set up like that. So we've got a kind of chisel edge to it. So first of all, I'm going to do this part of the tank. Because I'm using the chisel tip, I'm able to get a little bit closer than I was with the flat head. There's not all of the sponge has got paint on it, so if I push it forward, the face of the sponge doesn't actually have any paint on it, so I'm not worried about that touching the model as such. Makes it a little easier to do some of the harder to reach parts. Again, I'm going to try and drag some of the red to the edge, because the edge is probably going to be more obvious than the deeper parts. And hopefully you can see that the sort of colour shift that's starting to happen. It's gone from that dark, almost like a mahogany red, to a bit more what you can sort of Mechanicum red. Underside part. Try and get some red on this bit here. We're going to go over some of that with Retributor Gold, but that point, if I wanted to get in there, I'd change it out to a point, but I'm not worried about getting right in there. Some recessed shadow is quite useful on this. Top of the engine, part of the engine, make that look a little redder. Now, because I've got this chisel tip and it's still in relatively good shape, I can try and just do the top parts of the frame a little bit so they stand out, and hopefully it won't carry over down onto the body panel. To change directions here. But yeah, I've got no red bleed onto the body panel, which is what I want. Turn it around. Got a few little corrections to do, but nothing that we can't handle. And once the track's on, they may not be necessary, so we shall see. Just going to have a look at the underside, because there's a little bit of the housing we haven't done here. You're not going to see that paint that's on the wheel because it's on the inside, and it's going to have a track over the top of it anyway. So that's the main body of the tank. I'm just going to come back and look at the track sides, the section, just do the same thing. All the way around. Just trying to get right up into the top, so it doesn't look like there's a gap. It's a little one. I may have to come in with a smaller brush and correct that. I'm trying to do as much of this tank as I can with either sponges or makeup brushes, just to show you that you don't need to use small brushes. Sometimes a small brush is actually more of a challenge to paint bigger models with, and a lot of the refinement could be done with a small brush later on, but actually getting the colour on the model is often a lot more easier to get that on with a large brush or a sponge or something of that nature, even an airbrush. I do have airbrushes. I'm just shying away from using them for my YouTube videos, purely for the fact that for some reason people seem to hate on the airbrush. At the end of the day, it's just another tool. I get that it's something else to learn, and they can feel like they're a pain in the neck to get cleaned up and the like, and you spend more time cleaning them than actually using them. I do get that some people feel like that. I think a lot of people struggle to get to grips with one. I certainly have taken my time. I do use them, but I'm still happier with a brush in my hand than an airbrush. That's not to say that I dislike using it. I find it useful for certain things. At the end of the day, the airbrush is a tool. It has its uses. I know a lot of guys use it to base coat their models and the like. For me, I still find the rattle can sufficient for what I do, even for my zenithals, purely for the fact that I can get all the colours I need out of a rattle can if I'm doing a zenithal, and it feels a little bit more natural in some ways because you're playing with light, and I'd rather use the nozzle of the rattle can to give me my light source than my airbrush. And I've found it only useful in certain aspects for things like OSL and stuff like that, and various things. It's useful in blending. I've seen guys use it to blend out paint jobs and stuff. I've certainly seen Sergio Carvalho use it to such effect. But again, he's not just using the airbrush, he's using brushes, sponges, paint brushes, airbrushes. He's using everything. He's not restricting himself to one tool or one item. Again, it's an argument I'm having with myself about the use of abominable intelligence. At the end of the day, it's a tool, but I do get a lot of the arguments. I ascribe more to the view of it's how the tool is used. If it's used to provide an opportunity for people that don't have access, don't have the resources to be able to get themselves certain criteria, and it allows them to do things that they don't have the skills or abilities necessarily to do, i.e. certain aspects of programming apparently are very soon to be taken over by AI. If you have an idea for a game, but you don't have the knowledge of programming languages, and your only recourse would be to have to go and pay a programmer to build your computer game for you, I can see there being a certain aspect to that that opens up the market. But again, people will argue that it's taking away someone's job, and I do understand that as well. Right, we're going to have to create a face on those. Trying to paint the edge of that. There's got paint on those. So I'm done with the sponge for the moment. Let's get rid of that one. I'm going to have to correct the metallics on there before I go much further. I need to give some of the metallics a wash with rattling grime. So I'm going to leave that to dry once I've corrected the metallics. I'm just going to come back in with a little bit of Iron Warrior on a slightly smaller chiseled brush. So let's find one of them. So that's probably the smallest I'm wanting to go. I'm just using the chisel tip on this Army Painter small dry brush to help me correct some of this that I've got on the edge of the track, or on the edge of the wheels for the track. It shouldn't take very long at all. Don't matter about tiny little mistakes. We're going to get some marks and scuffs on it at a later date, but do want the general look and feel right at this stage. And I think I just put my knuckle in red paint. Problem of loading your paint directly onto your table. Armour out. I'm just using it straight out the cap lid. What I'll try and do is correct any little bits I've got on these wheels. So that one ain't too bad, just a little bit on the back. So that'll do for that one. Let's check the wheels on the side. Didn't get it too badly. I don't think there's anywhere else I need to correct it. So I'm going to leave all of that to cure off for a little while, get rid of this red paint I've managed to get on my knuckle, and let that cure for a bit, and then come back in and apply some gold and stuff in places and some weather in, and we can probably get the tank more or less assembled. So I will need to put some verdigris on the inside of these before we go much further. But that's what the tank is starting to look like. I think we've kept most of the metallics as we want, and those bits that we can see that are bronze are where we want it. We've just got some of the front to sort out, the console, and then put some verdigris in, stuff in, and we can get that assembled and put the tracks on. So we should be back in a bit.